Uh, good, af- Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Bhargav HK, Program Lead, Bytes, Bengaluru. I would like to welcome today's expert and all the participants to Bytes Expert Series. Today's topic is building a career in data science or in cybersecurity. Today we have with us an eminent expert, Dr.R Venkateswaran sir, Senior Vice President, Persistent Systems Limited. As a Senior Vice President at Persistent, Dr. Venkateswaran sir is responsible for strategic transformation projects with a focus on enabling the growth of Persistence business. An industry thought leader with more than 30 years of IT experience. Sir, people will call him as Venki. So Venki sir joined Persistent in 2002 and has undertaken various roles during his stint. Prior to Persistent, he worked for 7 years as a researcher at Bell Laboratories and in the CTO office at Lucent Technology. He earned his BTech and MTech in computer science from IIT Bombay and has a PhD in computer science from Washington State University. Third holds multiple patents and has authored numerous research papers. He serves on the board of studies of several academic institutes and delivers technical sessions to students across India as a part of the ASIM India Eminent Speaker Program. Sir, I once again welcome you. I request Dr.R Venkateswaran sir to continue session. Over to Venkateswaran sir. You just come on video mode, sir, for a few seconds
Yeah, I am
for
on video.
for documentation purpose.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bhargav, for the kind words of introduction. Let me share my screen and we'll get started.
Visible, sir.
Visible? Okay, great. So, so what I'll do today is, like sir said, I'll be talking about building a career in data science as well as in cybersecurity. So before I start, let me quickly get some basic disclaimers out of the way. First of all, whatever I'm going to talk today, these are my personal views and do not reflect the views of my employer, which is Persistent Systems. Second, I want to acknowledge that whatever I'm presenting here, a lot of the slides I've borrowed from various sources found on the internet. So I want to acknowledge, of course, in most of the slides, I will have a citation from where I have borrowed those figures or text, but definitely want to acknowledge all the various owners of that content. Want to acknowledge their contribution and convey my thanks to them. Okay. So the way I have structured today's session is in two parts. Part one, I'll talk about the career in data science, and then part two, I'll talk about career in cybersecurity. In each of these parts, I'll talk about what that field is about, why it is important, and what does it take to pursue that particular field, and what is the career path ahead for each one of you, okay, if you decide to choose that. Okay, so that would be a broad structure. Having said that, there are a lot of slides that I have. I would really encourage each one of you to interrupt me if required, pause and ask questions, because I'd like this to be a more interactive session than me talking about what I have to say. Okay, I don't need to cover all the slides. I can cover all the salient points, but I would rather have an interactive session with you asking questions, me responding to it, than me just covering the slides. Okay, so with that brief overview, let me get started with the first part, which is on data science. Okay, let me start with the story. Okay, lung cancer. I want to talk about lung cancer. I'm not a doctor, of course, though I do have a doctor, attached to my name. I'm not a medical doctor, but I do want to talk about, lung cancer. Why lung cancer? Lung cancer, because it's one of the most common forms of cancer, which is much more than the other forms of cancer that one would come across, and it claims more lives than these other cancers put together. Okay, so it's a very critical illness that one comes across, and it is much more prevalent than you and I think of. Okay, so why am I kind of talking about lung cancer in a session which talks about data science? Before that, let me share a little bit of statistics. Okay, lung cancer, the reason it is very important is to focus on is that its progression in terms of the outcome for patients suffering from lung cancer is not very optimistic. Okay, even if the cancer is just localized to the lungs, even then the 5-year survival rate is just 65%. And that survival rate drops significantly if the cancer spreads to nearby organs in and around the lungs, drops down to 37%. And if it spreads to areas which are beyond the vicinity of the lung, the survival rate drops significantly to just 9%. Okay, which means 91% of the patients who unfortunately fall victim to lung cancer do not survive beyond 5 years. Okay, so it's a very bleak future. Okay, now why is this important? The sad part of it is that more than 70% of the patients who suffer from this disease, their diagnosis happens after the cancer has actually spread outside the lung. Okay, which means the prognosis for them is very, very non-encouraging. Okay, so now why is this? Why is the detection not happening early enough? There are two main reasons. One reason is that the symptoms of people suffering from lung cancer are very similar to other common illnesses. They suffer from typical cough, maybe shortness of breath, a little bit of feeling tired, and so on. And people attribute it to many other common illnesses. Right? You have a cough, you just say, oh well, maybe small infection here or there. You may feel tired, you just feel that you're working too hard, or you're not caught up on sleep. You attribute it to many other things, and therefore you don't get yourself to go to a doctor. Okay, that's one. The second reason is that even if you go to a doctor, for the doctor to diagnose lung cancer, the way they have to do it is they have to collect the tissue from the lung, which is a very invasive procedure, and it has a lot of other complications associated with it, in the sense that when you cut open to extract the tissue from the lung can collapse, and it can cause other complications. So there is a reason why the detection does not happen on time, which means that the prognosis is very discouraging as we go along. Okay, so what is the way forward? How does it? So in the last 4 or 5 years, significant innovations have happened around how to detect lung cancer, and one method is by examining through a blood test. Now, blood tests are easier to do because they are not very invasive. You can collect blood at fairly quickly, and you can analyze the blood sample and have, at least there are now tests that have come up which can at least eliminate lung cancer in many cases, 98% accuracy. But the challenge there is this screening of this blood sample has to be done by a very well-trained individual, a doctor who is well-trained in analyzing the sample and interpreting the results accurately. Otherwise, again, you're back to where you were. You may misdiagnose, you may have other challenges and so on. Okay, so a lot of progress has happened in the last 4 or 5 years. So to overcome this challenge of having extremely well-trained doctors to be able to detect these things, the adoption of technology has brought in significant value to this whole diagnosis process. So use of data science has helped the doctors to now use the models, the right kind of models, and when the samples are passed through this model, the data models, the accuracy rate has increased significantly. So using data science to help diagnose lung cancer has helped in a very accurate, more consistent, fast and efficient way of diagnosing. And that's one of the reasons which has really shows a lot of promise in terms of being able to diagnose lung cancer early on, and therefore being able to start the treatment process early on and have a more positive outcome in terms of for the patients of this disease. Okay? So that is a, I just wanted to use this to kind of set the context of why data science is important. Okay. Now, with that introduction, let me talk about, what is a data scientist? What are the data scientists really do? So a data scientist, who is a data scientist? A data scientist is somebody who knows how to look at the data, extract meaning from it, being able to interpret it. Of course, obviously, needs to use the right kind of tools, and more important is the domain knowledge. So data science is at the confluence of three important fields, right? One is, of course, had to be a good computer science expert, to have a reasonably good foundational knowledge of mathematics and statistics, and also the domain knowledge in which the data science is going to be applied. So if you're talking about in the area of healthcare or in the area of lung cancer in particular, needs to understand that. We don't expect that everybody would be an expert in all the three, but having a foundational working knowledge of all these three, and a deeper knowledge of the tools and technologies available in the area of data science becomes very, very important to be a well respected data scientist. Okay. Let me get the terminology right. Data science is used loosely with AI, ML, and so on and so forth. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands when I say data science, what I mean by it. Data science is the broad umbrella of a field which involves working with data, right? Interpreting data and coming up with insight from the data and so on. Artificial intelligence is a small subset of this whole field of data science, where one looks at how to build the right kind of machine models and use the right algorithms to interpret, that is used to interpret the data. And then machine learning comes in, where it creates a computerized model which automatically helps to devise various kinds of analysis and the interpretations of that in a more automated manner. Okay, so data science, AI, and ML are basically part of the, AI and ML are part of the broad spectrum of data science. Okay, so I don't want to kind of say that, oh, data science is different from AI, is different from ML. They are all part of the same umbrella set of field of study. Okay, so coming back to, again, while data science has been is very popular across all the fields, let me focus again on healthcare. We just talked about one of the areas where data science is used in improved diagnosis. I talked about the lung cancer as a story, right? Where we saw data science being able to do the diagnosis in a consistent, accurate, fast, and efficient manner. Okay, much better, or is a good, valuable aid for the doctors and the clinicians who are doing this diagnosis on day in and day out. Okay. Other areas where data science is used in the area of healthcare, in the broad area of healthcare, a lot of us wear these medical devices, right? It may not be called medical devices, whether you use a Fitbit kind of a device, or you wear an Apple Watch, which has a lot of sensors that measure the biometric parameters and so on, whether it is your temperature, your heartbeat, your oxygen level, and so on. So there are all these wearables which are always connected, continuously monitoring the various health parameters, and they generate a lot of data. And being able to use this data by monitoring these parameters to support preventive healthcare is a very important area of study in for data science in healthcare. This helps us also to do what we call as precision medicine or personalized medicine. A lot of the times, the medical industry has been that one prescription fits all kind of a mode, right? If you have a headache, the doctor would prescribe a medicine that typically works for a very large cross section of the population, but it is still may have a negative impact on a particular individual, because they may have certain symptoms or certain body makeup which is different from the norm, right? So the ability to use all the individual characteristics, whether it is their other parameters, their height, weight, body parameters, biometric parameters, and so on, to be able to arrive at the right dosage and the right medicines, eliminating the allergies and all the things that they typically are associated with medicine, being able to eliminate all of that and arriving at the right dosage for that individual, to treat that individual for their specific illness, is a very important aspect of personalized precision medicine. While we talk about using data, end of the day, what the data and the analysis of the data does is it helps the doctor to take actions, right? It is not about throwing graphs or plotting charts and so on. It is about helping the doctor to take actions, whether it is on the diagnosis side or it is on outside of individual medicines and so on. There are many other things like the supply chain, getting the right kind of schedules for the patients to visit the doctor. All of these things are actions that the different individuals associated with the medical field have to take, and data science kind of aligns very well with that. It's also very useful in the seasonal epidemics like flu season, or when we had COVID, we were looking at using data for contact tracing and so on, right? All these are important aspects of use of data science in healthcare. One of the other big areas where a lot of data science is being applied is in minimizing the hospital readmissions and improving the overall health community health. It's a general misconception that hospitals make money or are incentivized if their beds are full, right? Especially in the US now, there is in the last 4-5 years, there's the trend has been to incentivize hospitals not for keeping their beds completely full, but if they can get the community health improved, okay? Which means they want to remotely track the health parameters of the community, people belonging in the community. They want to make sure that people come to hospitals in a timely manner so that their stay at the hospital can be minimized. And they want to also minimize the hospital visits in the first place. So if they can diagnose things remotely and prescribe medicine remotely and make sure that the patients or potential patients are taking these medicines regularly, if they can do all that remotely and don't have to come to the hospital, then there is a strong incentive provided by the state and the federal government in the US to incentivize the hospital. So there is this new trend that has come up, and that is catching on. All of this requires data science to be applied in healthcare. While I've been talking a lot about healthcare, it is not applying data science is not just for healthcare. It has a wide range of applicability across different industries, whether it is travel, ability to price the tickets properly, ability to predict whether the flight will be on time, ability to do in travel industry, that's we all use Uber. Uber uses a lot of data to do this dynamic pricing, right? So that's one good example of how data science is applied in the travel industry. Similarly, marketing, social media, banks use data science to figure out whether there is a fraudulent transactions going on. If they have to dole out loans to individuals, how they can minimize the risk. So there are lots of areas in each of these respective industries where data science plays a very critical role. Okay, so I'll take a pause here and see if there are any questions. And then I'll continue. If there are no questions, I will continue. Are there any questions? You can either unmute and ask, or you can type it on chat. Though I may not be able to see the chat, I'll request Mr. Bhargav to just read out if there are any questions on the chat.
Sure, sir.
So if there
are no questions in chat box, sir.
Okay, so there are no questions. Let me continue, and I'll really encourage people to just pause and ask questions, because the whole objective is to keep the session interactive. Okay, now let's come. Am I audible? I thought I got.
Yeah, audible, sir. Audible.
Okay. All right. So what is in it for each one of you, right? Why do you want to build a career? First of all, given the applicability of data science across the various industries that we just saw, There is a huge shortage of data scientists in this world, okay, today. And while I'm sharing some data from 2020, this trend has not changed. In fact, it has actually, the gap has actually widened. Okay, there's a huge demand in terms of various kinds of job listings. In fact, because of the shortage of skills, there was also a very significant hike in the average salaries of people who have data science skills, because there's a huge demand for it. And most companies we talk to, whether they are in the healthcare space, or they may in the banking, or they're in the travel logistics or retail, you see them coming and saying that, okay, they are looking to expand their data science team. Okay. Because they
Sir, I want
believe
to
that
take a lighter moment. So there is one question in chat box, sir.
yeah, please.
Sir, if admission in the hospitals reduces due to use of DS in healthcare, what about the sustainability of hospitals? Asked
That's a
by
good
Mohan
question.
Aradhya.
Yeah. Okay. So again, see, end of the day, while it's good that hospitals are there for treatment of patients, it is not that, okay, when I talk about the beds must be vacant, I'm not saying that the entire hospital must be empty. All we are saying is that we don't want people going to the hospital for illnesses that can be treated remotely at home. Okay, that's the whole objective. And overall, when you look at using data science for improving the community health, at the end of the day, hospitals are there too for making sure that people are healthy, right? If that is the overarching objective that hospitals strive for, and not personal, profits for the individual hospitals, then that's what they are looking to achieve. And that's why the state governments and the federal government in the US are incentivizing hospitals to do that. So they don't want hospitals to be overcrowded for illnesses that does not require hospitalization, okay, or that does not require even a visit to the hospital at all, even an outpatient department. Of course, that does not mean that if you're critically ill, you don't go to a hospital. If they can detect it early on and make sure that the patients visit the hospital in time, then the stay at the hospital also can significantly come down. So that's the overarching objective. It's not to say that, okay, hospital should run on a loss, but they don't need to have an overcrowding where, to get an appointment or to get a bed, you have to wait for weeks, 10 days, and so on. Like it happened during the pandemic, right? The beds were in short supply. I mean, those were, of course, unprecedented times. But by and large, that's the overarching objective or the theme under which the hospitals today are functioning, especially in the US. And I'm sure the same thought process will continue in other regions as well. Okay. Hope I answered that question. Okay, moving on. So there is this whole demand, right, for data scientists. So has this demand what does it lead to? It's in which areas we see a lot of demand in AI area. There is a whole technical, the talent shortage, and we're talking about numbers which are huge. We're talking about 85 million, shortage of requirements in terms of what is projected. And we're of course, while this is in 2030, which is still 7-8 years away, or when this report was published, it was 10 years away. On a year by year, we're seeing this gap widening. And that is where it is important that we as team figure out, okay, how can we fill this gap? And it also for students who are looking to establish a career and looking to be part of this industry, can explore opportunities in this space. It's a very exciting space, and there is a demand. So obviously, it's something that you can always be part of and evaluate and see how well you fit into this career path. Okay, so that talks about the what is this field about, where the application of this field is, and what is the demand. Let me move ahead. So bottom line, what I'm saying is that in the past, people with math skills or data skills were not very popular in the overall industry, right? There was this whole charm about being, oh, I am a computer scientist, or I focus on hardcore computers. I do operating systems, or I do this, various kinds of things. But now there's a whole lot of admiration and respect for people who want to pursue this particular field. Okay. Now, what does it take for to become a data scientist? You need obviously have a an education aligned with this area. So this is a quick chart talking about what specializations one needs to pursue to be able to be to build a career in this space of data science, right? One, a degree in data science. Many colleges today offer a specialized degree in data science, and this is obviously one easy way or one very obvious way in which one can enter this field. Having a strong statistical background helps you to enter this field. Of course, computer science in general as a degree. So we talked about it, right? The field of data science is at the confluence of computer science, confluence of mathematics, statistics, and also the domain, right? So ability to understand the domain, where the applicability of data science comes in, right? And general degree in engineering and other things are also important. But by and large, these are the top 2-3 areas. If you pursue a degree in one of these 3 areas, then you can pursue a career in data science. Okay. So what skills specifically do industries look for? Let's start again. This is a very broad slide, but yeah, statistics, mathematics, machine learning, optimization, these are broad skills that are required. Programming, of course, whether it is in languages like Python, R, and others, are definitely programming languages that are more attuned to a career in data science. Knowing the computer science fundamentals, whether it is data structures, databases, networks, all these are also equally important. Visualization is a very important aspect. End of the day, when you have data, ability to present what the data is telling is how the data is visualized. So ability to create the right kind of charts, the right kind of graphs to visualize what the data is telling is a very important skill to be picked up. I can't emphasize enough the knowledge of the business. Again, I don't expect that everybody will be an expert in the business or in the domain, but having a reasonably good working knowledge of the domain to apply data science to that particular domain is a very important requirement. That's how you can then apply the right kind of tools and interpret the data in the context of the domain. Okay? Given that the volume of data is increasing significantly and the ability to model these various data science data models for different domains requires a lot of compute intensive activity, cloud computing and big data becomes a very critical requirement. Last but not the least is the ability to tell the story. See, end of the day, data tells a story, right? What you visualize, what you interpret, you should be able to communicate that interpretation to the right set of people who can take the decisions, who can take actions. So the ability to communicate and tell that right story is a very important aspect of being a data scientist. So again, I don't expect that everybody, you have to be good in everything. You have to build up these skill sets over a period of time to be considered as a very well respected data scientist as you pursue a career in this area. Okay. Again, I'll pause for a minute, see if there are any questions.
Yeah, sir.
Yeah.
There is one question, sir. Good afternoon, sir. What kind of revolutionary form will data science take in future? Asked by Soumya.
What kind of, sorry, what is the question?
What kind of revolutionary form will the DS take in future?
Yeah. Okay. So again, I can't predict what the future holds, but if you see, I'm talking about the applicability of this data science to a wide range of business problems, right? So that is one aspect of it, which means that, like I talked about again, I'll just go back to the lung cancer case. The revolutionary part is that, the problem at hand was so drastic. So, it was a very critical problem, right? But the problem has now, by applying the data science to this problem, it has helped to really get a very impactful solution. Again, time will tell, how impactful it is. It's still too early days. But what we are seeing is showing a lot of promise. How we can use data science to assist the expert doctors and to do this on a consistent basis, fast and efficiently, is a very important aspect of what data science is, right? That's what we talked about. Will there be something significant revolution? Yes, we are seeing some of these now, right? We're seeing the advent of things like ChatGPT. The this technology was predicted to happen sometime way into the future, 2030 or so. It is 7 years or 8 years ahead of its time. This is very, very unprecedented that, some technology which was predicted way into the future happens so early on. Usually things get delayed because we overestimate that the speed at which technology will catch up, right? But in this case, it's actually the technology has caught up and exceeded what we had projected that, will happen, right? So it's a very significant, milestone in this whole area of data science, AI, ML put together, right? So like that, we cannot predict what will happen. We never predicted that ChatGPT will happen in 2022, 2023, but it has happened. It has caught on by storm. Everybody is using it. People are applying it to different problems and are amazed by the results that it generates. Right? I'm sure you all have all experimented with it. Like that, many new technologies will come up. In the next 4 to 5 years, you'll see a lot more applicability of the existing technology and new technologies that will come up, and time will tell what revolutions that we can expect going forward. So sorry, I'm not able to answer your question very precisely, but hope that gives you an idea of what to expect.
Sir, one more question.
Any other questions?
What is the difference in the roles of data scientist and data analyst?
Yeah, I will talk about that in terms of what a career path means. So give me a minute. It is there in the slides. When I come to that, hopefully that will answer your question.
Sir, one more question.
Yeah.
What is data engineering?
Okay, so again, maybe I'll talk about it. So data engineering is basically, how you build a system that can handle large volumes of data, how it will handle and be able to arrive at the, see, when you handle large volumes of data, usually what happens is your system slow down, right? How are you able to build systems at scale to be able to handle the large volumes of data? Second part of data engineering is, as in many fields, you may not get the right kind of data. So how you can use the models that have been built for a particular problem, being able to take those models and adapt it to newer problems is what data engineering is all about. Okay. So it's a very intricate area, but definitely a lot of exciting things are happening there.
Yes, sir. One more question.
Yeah.
Does business analyst come under data science field?
Business analyst usually is not part of a data scientist role. Business analyst is a person who understands the business and can translate the business requirements to a technology requirements. So business analyst kind of plays the role of a liaison between technologists and business teams. Okay, so the technology team is building a solution using the various computing resources and so on. The business team has a problem to be solved and they are looking for somebody who can bridge that gap. So business analyst is kind of bridging that gap. A data scientist is a person who's looking at it from, I'm not saying that a business analyst cannot interpret data or cannot use data, but usually it's an expert who understands how to take the data, how to collect the data, how to acquire it, clean it, make sure that it is in the right model, choose the right algorithms to solve the problem at hand. That's what a data scientist does. So a business analyst who understands the business problem, can translate it to technology and work closely with the data scientists and other technology teams to solve that problem.
Kindly continue the session, sir.
Sure. Okay, so let me move on. Now, somebody asked this question about what is the difference between data analysts, business analysts, and so on. Yeah, a business analyst is, while in the career path, we do say that, they are part of it. They do play a critical role, but their basic skill set is in interpreting the domain problem and translating into the technology requirements. Okay. Data analyst is somebody who focuses more on looking at where to get the data from and how to use the data to visualize the right kind of insights and interpretations. Okay. Data architect and chief data officer are people, as you progress in the career, they are the experts who look at the broader perspective of how to build this whole framework of data acquisition, data cleansing, data interpretation, data modeling, data visualization, data interpretation, data analysis, all of it. How do you build solutions or templatized solutions around, or a framework around this whole framework of acquiring and working with data. So that's what a data architect or a data chief data officer who progresses from a data architect, eventually designs the strategy for a data. And data is not just about, getting the data and showing it, right? It's all about, there's also a lot of focus on ensuring that who has access to the data. How do you make sure the right governance processes are in place? How do you make sure the privacy of the individuals are protected? So there is a lot of other things that need to come in when we look at, somebody who is working with data, because you don't want your private information to be leaked out, right? You don't want unauthorized folks to access certain kinds of insights that are reserved for specific individuals to look at and to interpret, right? All these things are part of the data science framework. But as you progress, start with basic reporting, look at collecting data, creating visualizations, move to be an analyst who understands the domain problem and is able to interpret or bring in the technology aspects of it to the business problem, then become the data architect who can, again, this is just one career path. Definitely, there are multiple career paths that individuals can follow. I'm just talking about a sample career path here. Okay. Hope this answers your question about what a business analyst does, what a data scientist does. What a data science career path looks like, and the roles that one can play as you go along in the career path. Okay. Any questions? If there are none, let me quickly.
Yeah. Continue, sir.
Okay. Let me continue. And, see, when we talk about data, let me also talk about, what there are lots of questions that data has to answer, right? What we call as the value creation from data. Okay. The basic thing is, data acquisition, where the value is not much, but you just have to know, okay, what data to collect, right? Then you have to kind of use this data to say something, right? Basically, to answer the question, what is happening in the, in the scenario where you collected the data, right? So what's happening is all about data visualization, monitoring, and so on. Then to be able to talk about historical aspects, okay, what has been happening in the past, so trending and other things are part of that. Then comes the more interesting questions of why did certain things happen, right? What we call as diagnostics. Then we talk about, okay, now that I know that what has happened in the past, I have an understanding of what has been happening as a trend. Can I now extrapolate and talk about what will happen in the future, right? So what can I expect to happen? Okay. Then that part becomes the predictive part. Then comes the prescriptive part, where we can kind of now start creating actions, right? You should do this or you should not do this and things like that. And that's what data is telling you. Based on data, you can very clearly define certain actions, right? When we talked about that lung cancer case, right? Now using data, if it comes up with a diagnosis saying, yes, this individual is likely to have a lung cancer, okay, then it can give specific actions to the doctor saying you have to do this, or to the patient saying you have to do this or you should not do this, right? So that's what the prescriptive part is. And last but not the least is to automate all of them so that it can learn on its own. And that's, of course, the highest end of this whole spectrum of value creation from data, what we call as the cognitive part. Okay, how it learns, continuously learns, and so on. To some extent, we were expecting that this cognitive part will take some time, but now if you see the chat GPT part, right, a lot of these, the cognitive nature of data and using data to create the cognitive nature of cognitive solutions is coming up as we speak, right? Of course, there is still some ways for the models to improve and so on, but it will only improve in the coming years, right? But we have started scratching the surface of what cognitive can really mean. Okay, so this is where the value is. Starting from data acquisition all the way to cognitive, the value will obviously increase as we apply data to different aspects of the problem. Okay, so let me now kind of pause here. I spent a lot of time talking about data, and let me kind of, I know it's been a little heavy maybe, so let me kind of take a short, lighter note here. Now, you're decided to become a data scientist. You have to clear a job interview, right? So how do you clear the job interview? Obviously, you have to answer all the questions that the interview is going to ask. So how do you do that? So let me put it on a lighter note, and I'll pause the session, part one of this today's session on data science. Say that, okay, this, of course, it's a lighter note. Don't expect that you'll be able to do it. But yeah, this is what data science is all about. Okay. Hope this gives you a brief idea of data science. And I'll quickly now move to the second part of the session. If there are no questions, I'll move to the second part, which is on cybersecurity. Okay, but let me take a minute. Any questions on the data science part before I move?
Yeah, sir. There is one question.
Yeah, please.
Can generative adversarial network generate fake data? Asked by Pratik.
Yeah. See, what is adversarial network? At the end of the day, it is about creating fake data. Not fake data. It's about creating data that can confuse the data models, right? That's basically what adversarial is all about, right? How do you build models that can resist adversarial inputs, adversarial data is what the science around how to build your systems which are resilient to adversarial attacks is what, or adversarial data is what the new data models should be looking at. So can it be used to create fake data? Yes, it is. The objective is to create fake data. Objective is to create fake insights, but the models have to be robust enough to be able to identify that this is fake data and be able to eliminate them, because they're not just correlating based on one data point. They have to correlate with all the others. And what you need to see is that consistent view of the world, right? Don't just depend on only one data source. Look at how it correlates with many other things, and only then be able to build your model. Should be built in such a way that it can look at all the various aspects of it and then make your predictions or your actionable insights based on the multifaceted view as opposed to a single view. And that's what the robust data models should look like. So will GAN create fake data? That is one of their objectives. Their objective is to create data that will confuse the data models, and the value of a data scientist is to create data models that are robust to thwart the the data that the GAN throws at. Okay. All right. So let me move on to the second part, which is on cybersecurity. Again, a very, very interesting area. Let me again start with the story. You all know Russia and Ukraine, what's happening there. And this is not, while the war started last year, these two countries have been at loggerheads for a very long time. And I want to kind of talk about an incident that happened a few years back. I'm talking about sometime in June 2017, right? Ukraine is a small country, but it is very rich in technology. They host a lot of critical data infrastructure, critical infrastructure. They host a lot of applications and so on. One of their data centers hosts an application which is very popular in the accounting field. And Russia as a country was able to infiltrate this particular data center and was able to infiltrate this particular application. Now, because of this, because it's a very popular accounting software, a lot of industries in Ukraine were using this software. So they got impacted because of this attack. So it was kind of not, it was called as a cyber war because it was almost like a war where Russia unilaterally kind of jumped in and attacked this software, and it crippled a whole lot of industries within Ukraine, be it the banks or the gas stations, the transport, the groceries, and so on and so forth. Okay, so there are a lot of industries that got impacted. Okay, now this is a war between Russia and Ukraine. It's kind of isolated in that region of the northern part of Europe. Why are we worried about it, right? Unfortunately, in today's hyper-connected world, this small incident of Russia attacking this particular application in Ukraine had far-reaching implications. And what I'm going to talk about now is one of those. So one company, which is called, it's a company called Maersk. It's a Danish company, and they are in the business. They are one of the largest shipping companies. Okay, they ship goods from one part of the world to another using these large ships. They have about 800 ships. They have 76 ports that they man. Very big organization employing 80,000 people. They have more than close to 600 offices in 100 plus countries, and so on, right? They had installed this software in one location on one of their computers. And when this attack was activated, that computer got infected and it spread like crazy, and it pretty much impacted all the offices across this company, this shipping company. Every one of their servers, the laptops that the employees were using got infected very, very quickly, and they had to shut them down. Okay. In fact, there was so much of panic that people were just pulling the plug. I mean, we use the word pull the plug, right? They were just pulling the plug to just switch off the computer before it got infected, because the rapid rate at which the malware was spreading across this entire organization. Okay. Now, okay, the computers got infected, and their business is now crippled. Look at the challenges or the impact of this, right? These are ships. Now there are ships that are in the ocean carrying a lot of cargo. They had to now figure out, okay, which port this cargo has to go. Without computers, they couldn't figure that out. There were trucks getting lined up in various ports that had to load these ships for taking it to other destinations. So there was a long queue of trucks that are coming in. So all the trucking companies which were carrying this cargo, they got impacted because these trucks are now waiting at the ports, waiting for the ships to come in so that the cargo can be loaded, and they're just waiting there, right? The trucking companies got impacted. The companies that were looking to ship the cargo, right? All of them, this is part of their supply chain, right? They all got impacted because the delays now happening, especially, okay, non-perishable items like electronic goods and other things were still but manageable, right? Delays can be managed to some extent, right? Though they does build up a backlog. But these ships also transport perishable goods like food and fish and meat and other things. While there is cold storage, these items perish very, very quickly, and those items had to be shipped. And now these trucks are waiting to load these items, and these items would just perish just while even before the cargo is loaded, right? So there's so much of impact of one single incident across the globe. Okay, that's what is the challenge of this hyper-connected thing. And this company had to now take quick actions, right? They had to first make sure that the customers are happy, right? They had to first, they had to make alternate arrangements. There were alternate shipping companies that they could use to transport some part of the cargo. They had to use, other means of transport like chartered flights and so on to take care of at least the perishable goods and so on, right? So they had to make a lot of these arrangements, okay, which they started doing. Then they have to also recover from it. Now the entire computer net, their operations are completely down, and they had to recover from it. So they put 600 people, called all of them into their office in London, and they worked non-stop for 2 weeks to recover all their systems. One of the challenges was that all these systems, their servers were all interconnected. So when one got infected, everything got infected. Fortunately, they had one office in Ghana, Africa, which was having a power outage when the infection started, and that those computer systems were actually not on at that time. So they had one computer in Ghana, which had one server in Ghana, which had the right configuration before the infection set in. Okay, so they physically carried it from Ghana to London, and they didn't even trust the postal or any of the couriers to do it. They went physically. One of their employees went and hand carried it back to London. And from that system, they were able to slowly restore one server after another. And they had to reimage all their laptops. And that's what they did eventually to get back on feet. Okay. So the impact of this one single server carrying that software cost them almost $300 million in overall, in loss to their business. And this is just one company. There were many other companies like Merck, which is a very well-known, one of the leaders in the pharmaceutical business. They lost more than $800 million. Then there was FedEx, they lost $400 million, and so on and so forth. So this entire incident, while we talk about it as isolated in today's hyper-connected world, this entire incident cost the global economy, by a very, very conservative estimate, more than $10 billion. Okay, so that kind of talks about how cyber attacks can really cripple the entire global economy. Okay, that also then reinforces why we need to have specialized field called cybersecurity to take care of these kinds of attacks. Okay, so let me talk about again, going back to the same structure I'll follow. Okay, what is cybersecurity? Cybersecurity is this practice of defending all these, the computing environment, the servers, the mobile devices, various electronic systems, the network, the data, all of this from malicious attacks. Okay, so to be able to do that, what all you need to do? You need to be able to first identify what those assets are that needs to be protected, right? If you don't know what to protect, you really can't protect anything, right? So you need to be able to identify. You need to be able to identify which assets out of these are vulnerable and which are safe, right? Or relatively safe. So you should be able to do that. once you have that, if you have systems in place to protect, whether it is the computing environment or the network or the data residing in this computing environment, all of this has to be protected. So you have technology to do that. Despite all this, should an attack happen, should be able to have systems in place to be able to detect the attack, so that you're not caught very late in the game once the attack has really happened, and then you realize much later in the game that things have gone way out of control, right? Be able to detect it early on. If you detect it, what do you do? How do you respond to this attack? So there's one part of it. And last but not the least, assuming that all of this you did right, still got attacked because there's no right answer or a right technology still available which will solve all the problem, should be able to recover from any kind of attack. So this is what this entire field is about, starting from identification, protection, detection, response, and recovery. Okay, so this is a very, very vast field, but again, very upcoming area, a lot of opportunities, lot of potential impactful contributions that one can make in this area. Typically, when we talk about cybersecurity, we typically talk about virus attack, right? It's not just virus. There are many, many kinds of attacks. I'm sure you must have heard of many of these terminology, but each of them has a very different connotation, whether it is a malware, a phishing attack, or zero-day exploit, or a ransomware. All these have a very different connotation or a very specific definition in the cybersecurity field. Okay? And cybersecurity kind of encompasses all these kinds of threats. So the typical word used is a threat to kind of have one single word that kind of covers all these various aspects. Okay? And this has been growing. Why we say that this is an upcoming area is because if you see the kind number of attacks that have happened in the last 1 to 2 years, this is a significant increase in this. And the COVID times have also kind of boosted some of these things, because many of us have now started working virtually. Many organizations have, which used to typically depend on people coming into their office and had a security around, the physical security around being part of an office. Now people are starting working from home. So your perimeter has kind of expanded from your office environment to home environment as well, and to the entire society at large. So it has made the entire organizations more vulnerable and more susceptible to attacks. And that's why we see this significant increase in the attacks on a year by year basis. And this is just one data point. And I'm sure this has continued in 2022 and will continue going forward as well. Just to share some statistics of what the last year was looking like, right? Of course, the dollar numbers, when you look at it, is just mind-boggling. Okay, we're talking about cybercrime costs. We're talking about $10 trillion. Okay, when you look at insurance, because the companies are getting attacked, they are looking at more and more insurance to protect themselves. What used to be an $8 billion business is now projected to become a $35 billion business in the next 7-8 years. Okay, this is whole spend that companies are doing to protect themselves. So this whole spend around global cybersecurity is again in the order of few trillions. Okay, and of course the volume of data is increasing. A lot of data points here. Some of it give and take. The numbers may look very big, but it is not. It's not inconceivable that these numbers can be are realistic, right? Even the ransomware related damage, they expect that what it is today, maybe a few billion, is expected to grow at least 7-8 times to 265 billion in the next 7-8 years. Okay? More important is the number of jobs available. We expect that today it's about 3 odd million. We expect that it will grow to 3.5 million in the next 2 to 3 years. And this is something that is, again, we have been tracking this area in the last few years. It has grown significantly and will continue to grow. So last year, World Economic Forum, which is a very well-respected forum, published a report on the impact of cybersecurity and how countries need to invest in it, and what is the skill gap that you see. And you can see some of the numbers are just phenomenally high, right? Even if you see just the Asia Pacific region, is 2 million gap. Okay, it's 2 million additional or vacancies that are going unfulfilled today, right? And this demand has also seen an increase. I can see it in the increase in the average salary in terms of the kind of remuneration that certified cybersecurity professionals can command in the market, and also the kind of job satisfaction that they see because of the kind of challenging problems that they get to work on. Okay, so this is a very, very lucrative in one sense, from a money standpoint, as well as from a technically challenging area for people who are interested in this area to pursue. Okay, so what key skills do you need? So we talked again about the demand, what is the problem, what is the applicability. Now let's talk about, what skills do you need, right? One is, of course, the technical knowledge. There is no two ways around it, right? What technical knowledge are we talking about? Knowledge of typical core computer science skills, right? Knowledge of programming languages, operating systems, web technologies. A lot of attacks happen over the web, right? So understanding of web technologies, network, because these attacks don't happen locally, right? They happen remotely using the underlying network technology. So understanding of that. As the adoption of cloud increases, the cloud technologies are very, very vulnerable to cybersecurity attacks. So one needs to understand how cloud and cybersecurity kind of go hand in hand. And of course, the tools are also, as hackers become more and more sophisticated, as the bad players become more and more sophisticated, the tools and technologies to counter them are also becoming more and more sophisticated. So understanding these tools and technology become very, very important. So that's the technical aspect of it. And like any other thing, if you are saying that you are going to act like a detective, who can look at problems, who can understand and observe the patterns and be able to solve the problem, so observation skills are important. Ability to solve the problem, because end of the day, what you observe, you should be able to kind of say, okay, this seems to be a cyber attack, or this is how the attack is happening. How do you now counter it, and how do you defend the organization that you work for is a very important aspect. Should an attack happen, being able to look at the breadcrumbs that are left behind by the attackers. Every attacker will leave something behind. That's what the digital forensics is all about. If you focus on that, figure out how the attack happened, then you can use that knowledge to prevent further attacks. And you can also educate others so that they don't get attacked in the same way. So when an organization gets attacked, there's a lot of focus on understanding how it happened and also sharing that knowledge with others so that others can benefit from it. Okay. And I cannot emphasize enough the need for excellent communication. Just like in the data case, communication skills have to be top notch, because end of the day, whatever you find as an expert, unless you can explain it to people who may not be as expert as you are, who probably understand to some extent, but may not be able to really pursue or grasp the enormity of the problem that you're trying to explain, or the solution you're explaining, should be able to do that in a very succinct manner. And that's what excellent communication is all about. So again, I'm not saying anything which you already don't know, but this is a very important aspect that one needs to focus on. Okay. What kind of jobs you get? Again, a lot of nice titles. You can be a forensic analyst, you can be a application pen tester. Pen tester is not testing a pen. So what do you call it? It's a short form for penetration testing. So how do you break open, like, the Abhimanyu and Chakravyu? How do you break open an organization's security defenses is what an penetration tester is all about. Then there are, security engineers who can kind of create the roadmap for future security, how to secure the organization. Then there are malware analysts who look at attacks and figure out how the attack happened, reverse engineer it so that they can then prevent further similar attacks, and so on and so forth. There's a whole lot of, opportunities for individuals who are interested in this particular area. Okay. Career path, again, awesome area of growth, from entry level to mid level to senior management. There is a whole lot of path that one can follow. Again, this is just a very small sample. There's many more paths that one can adopt to, if they decide to pursue a career in this field. There's a whole lot of opportunities to follow and become a well-respected cybersecurity professional. Okay. Let me pause here. It's almost 4 o'clock. Let me pause and see if there are any questions. I'll take questions and answer them rather than covering my slides.
There are 2 questions, sir.
Yeah.
One is, what role does cybersecurity play if there is a data leakage?
Okay. So if there is a data leakage, so how did the data leakage happen? So there are 2 ways in which data leakage happens. Data leakage happens because of negligence, right? Or incompetence. I mean, maybe that's a very strong word. but many a times it happens because of negligence. I mean, I don't know that about how to protect the data. So there's no malicious intent there. Okay. So that is one part of it where data leakage happens and, data gets leaked and, whoever is responsible for it needs to put systems and mechanisms in place to prevent that data leakage or do damage control once the data is leaked. That's one part of it. Second part is the malicious intent. That is where the data is actively the cyber criminals kind of attack an organization to get access to the data. And this could be the banks, even social network sites like Facebook and Instagram and others, to get access to the data so that data can be then misused. So that is where cybersecurity tools need to be in place to first, like we talked about, right? There is the first part is to understand what data is there. First, you have to identify that data. So this data has to be protected. It could be your, Aadhaar card number, your date of birth, your, bank account details, things like that. Those need to be protected. So that's the identification. Then have mechanisms in place to protect it. Despite that, if somebody were to get access to it, you should be able to detect that somebody has accessed the bank details of an individual in an unauthorized manner. Has to be detected. Once you detected, what kind of mechanisms you put in place to respond to that attack, and how do you recover from it? Should the data leakage happen, how do you recover from it? All these are part of the cybersecurity applications to data leakage. Okay, so hope that answers your question.
Are conservative cybersecurity measures resistance towards cyber attacks that use quantum computing, and are zero knowledge proofs future of cybersecurity?
Okay, that's a good question. So quantum computing, of course, it's still too early to say how soon it will become mainstream. Again, it is definitely expected to solve some of the today's big security challenges will get addressed hopefully by quantum computing. For that, of course, quantum computing has to become more mainstream. A lot of it is still in very, very early research stages. So it is still not practical to apply quantum computing to a security problem today. Yes, the application, I mean, researchers are working on it. It will eventually become mainstream, but not today. Okay. So what are the second part? One was quantum computing. What are the second part of conservative cybersecurity? So what was the question?
Wait for a while, sir.
Yeah.
Are zero knowledge proofs future
Zero
of
knowledge. Okay. Yeah. So there is this whole concept of zero trust principles. What zero trust says, you see, today many times what happens is the lot of security is based on trusting individuals. Say, for example, I work for persistent systems, right? The fact that I have a persistent systems email address gives me access to a lot of things, right? But a very smart hacker can impersonate me and get access to that data in an unauthorized manner, right? So the reason they are able to do it is because my organization trusts that if I have an email address, I am trustworthy, right? But the going forward, there's a whole lot of science that is evolving in this area, which is called as zero trust. Basically, trust no one and verify. So if I say, or if somebody says, using my email address, they say they are, there has to be mechanisms in place to actually verify. Simple mechanism is the two-factor authentication, right? Don't trust only the email address. Make sure that you send an OTP to the phone, right? Which is a second factor authentication. So many banks are adopting that. So things like that are, again, I'm just giving simple examples, but there is a lot more sophistication that happens in it. These are what are called as zero trust systems. And the way forward is to really start relying on these zero trusts. So basically, passwords and other things are, based on what you know. That also means that, somebody else may know it. So you have to figure out, how do you just not depend on what an individual knows, what an individual has. So it could be some hardware device like a cell phone and so on. And lastly, what they are. So this is the biometrics. So it could be a fingerprint, iris scans, and so on. So there's a lot of aspects around it, which the zero trust systems kind of depend on. Again, does everything have to be protected with the same level of sophistication? Probably not. Your bank account details maybe have to be protected. But if you're looking at, some of your, innocuous emails, maybe not to the same extent. So there are different levels of security that has to be applied to different set of assets that have to be protected. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, sir. You continue, sir.
Yeah. So anyway, when I talked about this, lucrativeness, it's just one data point. Last year, Google, or 2 years back, 2021, Google really paid one individual or one small company with 4 or 5 individuals to the tune of 65 crores just because they found more than 200 vulnerabilities in the Android systems. Okay, so that's the kind of thing that, as an expert, again, I'm not saying that you have to be in it for the money. Definitely passion and capability and other things come in, but it's a very, very promising area. Again, let me again put things on the lighter note. It's very easily said that cybersecurity being very easy. It's a very easy field, except that it's like when on one hand you say it's like riding a bike, very easy to pick up. Actually, it is not. Imagine that the bike is on fire, everything is on fire, and you have to still work in it. That's where the concept is. Okay. And what do cybersecurity professionals do? Yeah, they drink a lot of coffee. Sure. They don't trust anyone. We talked about the zero trust kind of a thing. And of course, when things go bad, they just get very, very angry. So that's what this field is all about. Okay. Again, take this on a lighter note. I don't want to kind of say that, okay, this is what it is. Okay. With that, let me kind of stop today's session. Again, thank you very much for being patient and all the wonderful questions. We have another few minutes. If you have further questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Any queries from participant side? Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. On behalf of all the participants and Bytes team, I would like to thank Dr.R Venkateswaran, sir, for such a informative session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
I thank all the participants for joining Bytes Expert Series. Thank you, one and all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you again for the opportunity.
Yes. Thank you, sir.